I am an exile. I was born in exile, as were my parents before me and their parents before them. Since the destruction of the Holy Temple of Jerusalem in 70 AD, when we were expelled by the Romans and scattered across the empire, the Jewish people have been a nation in exile, homeless and stateless. We outlived the mighty Romans, but for 2,000 years we faced countless attempts at our destruction. We were passed from nation to nation, strangers in a strange land. Only a century ago, my family landed here in the US, the only country to grant us citizenship, and we were spared the certain fate of the Nazi death machine. But we were the lucky ones. The nations of the world rejected millions of others who were unable to find refuge anywhere because we, Jews, were still a nation living in exile until May 15th, 1948. On that day, David Ben-Gurion proclaimed Israeli independence. Immediately, 7 nations joined arms to destroy the fledgling state. These nations declared that this would be, quote, a war of extermination and a momentous massacre of Jewish people. These nations promised another Holocaust to the 700,000 Jews in Israel just 3 years after Auschwitz. The refugees still bore serial numbers tattooed on their arms, but they were undeterred. They began the war with nothing. They set out to the front lines in their personal vehicles and on foot. They brought their own blankets and bedding. After exhausting the little ammunition they had, they died on the battlefield with nothing left in their hands but rocks. Despite insurmountable odds, their tenacity paid off. They won a resounding victory. When they said never again, they meant it. And with the Jewish state now secured, the Jewish people came home. But when they came, it was not to the land of milk and honey described in the Bible. Instead, the pioneers were confronted with a land of ruin and deserts. They performed a modern-day miracle through sweat and faith, and they made the land blossom. Israel is now home to 7 million Jews, 70% of whom descend from refugees of North Africa and the Middle East. Upon Israel's independence, they were expelled for the crime of being Jewish. They came from Morocco and Algeria and Libya and Tunisia. They came from Iraq and Egypt and Yemen and Syria, nearly 1 million of them, but they did not come by choice. And if they attempt to return, even today, they would be killed. So, Mr. Speaker, when someone tells you the Jews should go back where they came from, what exactly do you think they mean? Most of the rest of the Israelis descend from Holocaust survivors. After the war, many were forced to live in concentration camps set up by the Allies, healthy but still not free, not until 1948. Some had tried to return to Europe, but their homes were destroyed. In many areas, angry mobs and often local police blamed us for bringing the wrath of our own murderers. They rounded us up and executed us. Even in Europe, we were not welcome to return. Others tried to flee, but no one would take them. After the war, 50,000 were imprisoned on the island of Cyprus when they attempted to flee to their ancestral homeland. They had survived the Holocaust and the displaced persons camps. They made it on foot, with no money, to ports in the Mediterranean, only to be captured at sea by the British and put back in concentration camps. So, Mr. Speaker, I ask you once again, when somebody tells the Jews to go back where they came from, what do you really think they mean? Israel is, has been, and will be the only place Jews are really welcome. My people came to Israel as refugees. They came to rebuild their lives and for the first time in their existence to live free and as equal citizens. Many other Jews came to seek refuge in Israel throughout the years from places as diverse as Russia and Ethiopia, and they still come to this day because Israel is a sacred refuge for the Jewish people. This is not to say that, of course, the state of Israel is perfect. It is not. It is imperfect just as America herself is imperfect. There is no such thing as a perfect nation, but it is a democracy, and Israel gives a voice to the disenfranchised. Like most Jews, I am moved by the plight of the Palestinians, and one day I hope to stand before this body honoring the freedom of an independent Palestine living in mutual peace with Israel. Like the Israelis, Palestinians have the right of self-determination. And to that end, as I speak, hundreds of thousands of Israelis protest a government they do not support and laws they oppose. I sympathize with them, and if I lived there, I would join them. Their protests highlight both Israel's imperfection and her greatness. These citizens are allowed to speak their minds. There are no violent crackdowns against the protesters. It is a thriving democracy in a region where the concept itself is often forbidden. People ask me why I care so much about a country I've never even visited. It is because Israel is the one place on earth I can say without risk of persecution, I am a Jew and I am proud. Israel is our refuge, Israel is our hope, and Israel is our home. Born from the ashes of World War II, the state of Israel is both a consequence of the Holocaust and our only insurance against another. I will not defend everything Israel does, but what I will do to my dying breath is to defend her right to exist. Because when someone tells you they don't think Israel has a right to exist, what they are really telling you is they don't think the Jewish people have a right to exist. But we do exist, 15 million strong, nearly half of us in Israel. And yet, Israel is more than a collection of people or its government. Israel is the eternal hope of the Jewish people. It is the birthplace of the Jewish nation and where we have returned from 2 prior exiles. The dream of returning once again unites us all, wherever we are and wherever we were. Whether a young boy in Yemen 1,000 years ago, an old woman in Poland 100 years ago, or a Ukrainian soldier on the front line this very day, the hopes and aspirations of returning to Zion burns intensely in every Jewish soul. So I conclude with the final words of Hatikvah, the Israeli national anthem. Our hope is not yet lost, the hope of 2,000 years, to be a free nation in our land, the land of Zion and Jerusalem. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I ask if we can open the board up for co-sponsorship, please.
Gentleman from Jefferson 30, would you move adoption of the
Move for adoption. Thank you.
resolution is adopted without objection. Those members wishing to indicate their co-sponsorship, please indicate so on the board. Gentleman from McCracken.